With growing tensions in the Middle East, there have been cries for help from South Africans trapped in that region amid the unsettling climate. Described scenes of panic and confusion as airspaces remain shut and thousands remain stranded. At the center, the United States and Israel attack on Iran, where Sahid Husseini's family lives. He's not been able to speak to them since Saturday.
All right. Welcome to This Week in Africa, your weekly live stream where we talk about all things news related to the continent of Africa. I will turn it over to our co-host before I do my own introduction.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gloria Ayo. I am the founder of Diaspora Station. I love to share African history and, of course, current affairs. And I'm definitely very happy to be back.
Awesome. Happy to have you. And I'm Joe Hatagwa, the founder of Authentic African. We help people visit, move, and invest in Africa. We do these live streams weekly to help people understand the continent a bit more so they know about the places that they're planning to move, visit, or invest. Today's stories are as follows. We're covering the war in Iran's impact on Africa in a couple of different ways. There has been an agreement by the United States and Burkina Faso on a health deal. So we'll talk about that. People are very curious about that deal. So we'll talk about it. Zambia and Zimbabwe rejecting a very similar deal with the United States. Trump's administration, the deportation deals that have been done with Africa, the Burkina Faso and Ghana security agreement. So those are the top stories, and we'll have some stories from around the continent. Unfortunately, I will have to jump off early, but we have Gloria here you're in capable hands, so she will be able to go through the rest of the story. So we will get through what we can while I'm here, and then I will turn it over to her to go through the rest of the stories. So as a start, the escalating war in West Asia has triggered the most significant disruption in global air transport since the global sickness of 2019-2020, really 2020-2021. Following retaliatory strikes by Iran on U.S. bases in the Gulf, and then also many other places around the Gulf, including Dubai Airport, Kuwait's main airport, intercepted missiles in Qatar, etc. There's been lots of bombing happening in a number of different places. The conflict has forced Syria, Kuwait, Qatar, UAE, even sometimes Kenya and others, Air India, Lufthansa, Emirates. Many of those flights, something like over close to 3,000 flights had been stopped. More than 12,000 were delayed. Egypt Air, Ethiopian Airlines also halted major routes to the Gulf cities as well. So, there were urgent advisories for citizens to use land borders. So Ghana, Uganda, and Nigeria have also issued travel alerts for its citizens, and many more have as well. So this has significant impacts across the continent, not just in the region that it's in. We're going to play a video which speaks to this a little bit more, and then we'll have some commentary on the other side.
Now, the war in West Asia has triggered global travel chaos that said to be the biggest disruption to global air transport since the COVID-19 pandemic. Airlines rerouting flights to West Asia. Thousands of passengers have been stranded around the world. African travelers, too, have been caught in the conflict. After the US and Israeli strikes on Iran, Tehran launched retaliatory strikes on US bases in Gulf countries. It has struck the Dubai International Airport, which is the world's busiest for international traffic, and Kuwait's main airport. Now, following Iranian strikes, the Gulf nations rushed to protect their airspace. Iraq, Syria, Kuwait, Qatar, and the UAE have all announced at least partial closures of their skies.
So we'll leave it there. Gloria, your thoughts on the impact on Africa and the flight closures and people being stranded in the UAE, in Qatar, in some of the Gulf states and countries.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure everyone could hear the audio. I don't know if it's just me, but it sounded a little low.
Okay.
So if everyone could hear just fine, could you please let us know in the comments just to make sure you're hearing those videos as we play them? But as far as this, situation going on, I'm obviously personally not a fan of it just because of the antecedents we've seen. And I'm speaking from a global standpoint. The antecedents we've seen, the world is still healing from what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. That has impacted, if I want to just focus on the continent of Africa, that has definitely impacted us. We already have our challenges on the continent, but and this is why it's important for us to occasionally talk about these global issues, because they do impact us ultimately. The rerouting, for instance, has added 10 to 15 days to shipping journeys. And you're looking at approximately $1 million in extra fuel costs per vessel. In South Africa, for instance, their ports, particularly Durban and Cape Town, are facing a sudden massive influx of vessels seeking refueling and supplies. So this could actually delay Africa's own import-export cycles, because that channel through which these things were being transported, obviously that's being affected now by what's going on in Iran. The cost of chartering a crude oil tanker is now 4 times the rate seen just 2 weeks ago. The skies have been closed over much of the Middle East, with airports in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Doha, the primary hubs that connect Africa to the West and Asia. These are now suffering direct strikes or some sort of precautionary shutdown. Tens of thousands of African travelers, including students, business people, migrant workers, they're currently stranded in the Gulf. In Dubai alone, reports indicate that there are hundreds of Africans that are among the hundreds of thousands of passengers that are scrambling for next steps, because now these airlines have had to suspend most of their operations. Several African governments, and I do appreciate the proactive approach by these governments, more reactive, but still, I think considering they've done what they can to take care of their citizens throughout the world. I don't know if you saw the memes or not memes, but there were some videos circulating on the internet where some Nigerians were like, "We're not going anywhere. We're staying right here." And I was like, "No, please, no, don't do that. Let's not do that. It's not that bad. Come on, please." Not to minimize whatever their reasons are. But Kenya and Nigeria have definitely done what they can to at least issue shelter-in-place orders for their citizens in the Gulf. The French government has already begun mounting emergency flights to pick up stranded African and European nationals. Air cargo, we should also think about the pharmaceutical industry. If you're thinking of pharmaceuticals from India or Asia that are destined, or the entire continent of Asia that are destined for African markets, these shipments are now stuck because obviously they have to review the risks. So it's affecting Africa in a huge way, because the Strait of Hormuz has, as long as it remains closed, it's going to affect us even harder. And I get very concerned about my continent because obviously, like I said, we have our challenges already, and we don't need yet another drama or another chaos in the world to worsen things for the people of Africa. But God forbid this Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Oil price, food price, a lot of things are definitely going to skyrocket.
Yeah, and so I'll just say, as far as the people being stranded, it is really unfortunate, because I think so many people leave the continent for work in other places, right? Indentured servitude. A lot of people go to West Asia, formerly. I think some people call it the Middle East, but I think we should really call it West Asia or East Asia. West Asia. Yeah, so people do go there often to find work. And so, in many different countries there. So that's one. And so those people are stranded with no way back home, because they wouldn't want to stay in a situation where it's unstable and you don't know what's happening. There's all kinds of reports about the air defense forces that we do have, that the United States has in those different military bases in those regions, they are apparently running low on that. And so that would mean more damage can happen. And it doesn't seem like a ceasefire is imminent. So what that means is for the Africans in those regions is that it can only get worse, right? So I think, there have been all kinds of notices and things told to people. You can take ground transport to neighboring countries and attempt to fly out of those countries. They haven't really given schedules for flight dates and flights as of yet. Sometimes they just have a flight that goes out. Those who are wealthy are chartering private jets for hundreds of thousands of dollars. But it is a very, very dire situation there. And no one knows where is safe, right? I mean, bombs have been dropped everywhere. And so just on the subject of people being stranded, obviously, we're hoping for those folks to return home safely. And hopefully this can come to an end. So, our people and all people really can live with less devastation and less of a loss of life through these strikes. Now I do, secondary to that, beyond those being stranded and those flights being delayed and or canceled, it's also impacted global shipping disruptions, as Gloria just mentioned. So shipping companies have suspended sailings through critical waterways, facing vessels to avoid the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, and so and that was the other thing is, as of yesterday or the day before, Iran, they control the Strait of Hormuz, and that's one of the areas. And maybe we should show you what that looks like, right? So everybody knows what we're talking about. But that is a major shipping route. And that is now been closed as of, I think, yesterday or the day before. And so what that means is there is a lot of vessels being stopped from entering that space. Let me just share. Let me share this tab so you guys can see it. So as you guys can see, I hope this is showing on the screen. Let me see, actually. There we go. There we go. So here you can see, this is the Strait of Hormuz, right? So this is a major trade route. And you see here, and I guess maybe I can get a larger map so you can kind of see the full Gulf and where it impacts, because Saudi Arabia, UAE, here, I'll just do this. I'll just share this tab instead, so you can see a couple different versions of the map. So you can see here, the Strait of Hormuz is, Iran controls this area here. So you see Oman, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Iraq, all are impacted. Saudi Arabia, all are impacted by this closure. And so obviously that changes how some other trade routes are happening. So just really quickly, I just want to, we'll get to a video that talks about the entire Red Sea corridor has been disrupted. And the alternative route is around the Cape of Good Hope, significantly increasing travel distance and costs. Major carriers are rerouting their vessels and citing deteriorating conditions. Ports in Durban and Cape Town are also experiencing increased activity. So let me, we'll share this screen and share this video, and then we'll have some more commentary on the other side.
Now, from the air to the sea, the impact of the war in West Asia is now spreading across Africa. What began with disrupted flight routes is now spilling into global shipping, forcing vessels away from some of the world's most critical maritime corridors. Major shipping companies have now reportedly suspended sailings through key waterways linking Asia, Europe, and the Gulf. And once again, Africa sits at the center of the detour. The Strait of Hormuz, the entire Red Sea corridor from the Suez Canal in the north to the Bab el Mandeb Strait in the south, all of it is now being avoided as security risks escalate across the region. That leaves one main alternative, the Cape of Good Hope along the coast of South Africa. Analysts warn that the conflict is putting the world's busiest sea lanes under severe stress. Let's start in the Gulf. The Strait of...
So I'll leave it there. I mean, this is a much longer video and we could always talk about that more, but any additional thoughts on the disrupting of these trade routes and the rerouting kind of around the Cape of Good Hope and other places?
Yes. I guess because I've covered a lot of this already, I guess the big takeaway is, you know what, and that was why I corrected when I said proactive and I said reactive. We need to have leaders who can plan in advance. Things will happen in life. The world, things will happen geopolitically, things will happen globally that we have absolutely no control over. Even when it's not happening, for instance, what's going on in Iran is definitely not happening on the continent. But if we have good leaders who are able to proactively ensure that people are taken care of, should, God forbid, something happen, you know what I mean? Once we have good leaders, the impact of things going on throughout the world will have minimal impact. You know, Africa would not be hit as hard. It's not that we still won't be affected, but at least there would have been measures in place. Who knew that there was going to be a pandemic that would shut down the entire world in 2020? Were we prepared enough? We ended up having to get handouts once again from outside the continent. So I guess the big takeaway again is just for us to have good leaders who can be more proactive to plan for things that go on throughout, I think they call it the black swan, things that go on throughout the world that we have no control over.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, so as you mentioned, yes, I mean, and of course you could never fully prepare for something like this, but to your point, there should be safeguards in place, backup plans, other things that can be done to ensure something like this does not impact on the level that it has. You know, what I do see here is the potential for more trade if, in fact, all of these trade routes are working for the folks who are trading this way. So there could be a benefit to South Africa and other countries that have major ports along the way. Because of the amount of fuel that it takes, many of these ships will have to dock somewhere, right? And so I don't know if that means, you know, there's a fee to dock there or even the potential to do business in these places, but there potentially could be a benefit to Africa in this instance. But obviously, you know, the overall tragedy that is happening based on the United States and Israel's preemptive strikes are very, very concerning. And so we hope that, you know, if there's a silver lining to this, there's a benefit to Africa. But at the end of the day, we wish that we weren't even in this position in the first place. So we will continue to follow how this particular issue is disrupting the continent of Africa. Yes, I saw that comment. Yes, I am going to a client meeting today. So yes, that's why I'm dressed this way, which is why I have to leave in 5 minutes. I have to go to a work event. Back to the stories. So one of the stories that someone had asked on a comment yesterday, there was a question about this, and we wanted to make sure we covered this, and for you all to hear from you all. We want to hear your thoughts on this next story. So please, as you guys are watching, please share your thoughts. We'd like to hear from you. So the headline is, Trump funds Traoré's health plan as Burkina Faso signs deal with the United States. So what the background to the story is, Ibrahim Traoré has pivoted Burkina Faso security forces east while maintaining ties with the West for health. The U.S. and Burkina Faso signed a 5-year health cooperation memorandum of understanding, so it is an MOU, aimed at enhancing disease prevention and regional health security, with the U.S. providing up to $147 million and Burkina Faso increasing domestic health spending by about $107 million. So the MOU allocates $12 million for global health security initiatives, including strengthening clinics and lab systems. Additionally, Burkina Faso launched the Presidential Health Initiative to build 55 medical centers. relations are cautiously re-engaging despite past tensions. So love to hear from you guys. We're going to play this video, and we will have some commentary on the other side. But love to hear your thoughts as we hear about this story.
Hello and welcome. We begin in the Sahel, where the lines of global influence are being redrawn in real time. Ibrahim Traoré has officially pivoted east for security, but he's keeping a door open to the west for his country's health. Burkina Faso signed a major public health agreement with the United States. The memorandum focuses exclusively on disease prevention and regional health security. Now, according to the US Department of State, the agreement aims to improve Burkina Faso's ability to prevent, detect, and respond to infectious diseases, including HIV/AIDS, malaria, and future outbreaks. The framework runs for 5 years. Under the deal, the United States intends to provide up to $147 million. In parallel, Burkina Faso has committed to increasing its own domestic health spending by approximately $107 million. By the end of the agreement, US-funded laboratories and health officials are expected to be fully integrated into the Burkinabe system. Now, the deal allocates around $12 million specifically toward broader global health security initiatives. That includes strengthening clinics and laboratory systems in Burkina Faso.
All right, we will leave it there. Any thoughts you want to share, Gloria, on this deal?
Well, this is a very interesting one because obviously one thing people have praised Ibrahim Traoré for is his ability to stand against the West, stand up to them, and decline any interference in their politics. And, you know, a lot of people have supported him because of that. But I do have to point out that a unique feature of this MOU is the shift away from the way they've been doing it traditionally as far as Western NGOs are concerned. They're going to be directing the funding through state-aligned agencies. They're going to use local Burkinabe contractors. This was actually a demand that was made by Traoré to ensure that not a single dollar leaves the country to pay foreign consultants. Of course, it's focusing on maternal and child health, malaria eradication, rural clinic expansion, especially in zones where the military has recently reestablished state presence. Accepting this deal, obviously, as I pointed out, is in stark contrast to how other African nations have handled similar US health and security initiatives in this year alone. And we're going to get to some in just a bit. But speaking of Niger, if we talk about Niger, just in early February, they rejected a similar $120 million package that was by the US for health because they saw it as an interference after the US attempted to tie the aid to how they handle their democracy or lack of it, or however they phrased it. But Traoré, on the other hand, is negotiating a clean deal that's focusing strictly on technical cooperation, and he's bypassing the usual political conditionalities. Now, we talked about Guinea-Bissau, I think, just last week, who suspended did we talk about it? Anyway, not long ago, Guinea-Bissau suspended a US-funded hepatitis B vaccine trial following a massive outcry and criticism by the WHO. So they have avoided that guinea pig narrative, and people are now, you know, obviously looking at Traoré sideways. But if you're thinking about the whole, again, it's geopolitics. Of course, we know Russia has a huge partnership going on with Burkina Faso. And if you're wondering how this plays out, well, Russia is aware that the agreement they have with Traoré is more on the security side, the military side. As long as there's no interference there, then everybody is cool. But yeah, this was a shock to me.
Shock to me as well. But you know, you pointed out a few key differences between how this is being done versus how it's been done previously. You know, we are still at a position as a continent where outside aid seems to still be necessary. What I like, though, is that I see that Burkina Faso has also dedicated over $100 million to medical services as well. So it's not as if they haven't also almost matched. Well, they've come to 2/3 of the amount that they are going to spend as well. It is shocking. It is interesting. A couple of different things, as you mentioned. One, no outside consultants, all internal staffing. You also covered the fact that Russia is on the security side. They're working with the West on the health side. That is also a difference between how things have been done previously. But I know many of you are going to be shocked with this particular deal, considering Michael Langley's comments just 6 months ago, who I don't think he's any longer in the position that he was in previously. But there were many, there were many protests around the world in support of Burkina Faso and against the comments that were made about Burkina Faso. You heard from the Secretary of State at that time that they wanted to strengthen the partnership and made some comments to that effect. But yes, there are going to be some people who oppose this, very much so. And we definitely want to hear from you guys how you feel about this. Those of you guys who are watching this back as a video and who aren't watching this live, please put it in the comments how you feel about this deal. Those of you who are watching live right now, some of you might get to this later because you may have joined the live late. We'd love to hear from you and hear your thoughts. Yeah, I mean, as Gloria said, and I said, this was definitely shocking to us. Was it shocking to you all? And how do you guys feel about the framework of this deal? Would love to hear from you guys who are watching. With that, I am officially at time. I do have to head to this meeting. But Gloria, you're in Gloria's very capable hands. She will take over and start the process of going through the rest of the stories. I think the next story is Zambia and Zimbabwe rejecting U.S. health aid. So you can kind of hear and contrast between those two and how Burkina Faso decided to move forward. Love to hear from the comments. I know a bunch of people are joining right now, and unfortunately I have to go. But yes, thanks Gloria for taking this over, and I will see you guys all back very soon. Yes, so we'll talk to you guys later. Okay, see you guys.
Have fun in court.
Okay. I'm not going to court, by the way, for those who are coming newly. I'm going to a client meeting. That's from a joke from earlier, if you guys might have missed that. Okay, I am going.
I can be so silly. But yeah, thank you all for staying tuned. So now, I mentioned how Guinea-Bissau had just recently rejected some aid, or they didn't want their country, they didn't want their citizens to be guinea pigs. Now let's see the contrast as far as I'm just going to go over that quickly because I don't know if I have time to play the video. But as far as the way Zimbabwe and Zambia have actually approached this, so Zambia and Zimbabwe also were offered the U.S. health aid, just as Burkina Faso has accepted it. Of course, I referenced Niger rejecting it not long ago. Now, Zambia and Zimbabwe are two countries that have completely rejected this aid. Both have declined U.S. health funding due to concerns about these conditions. And this is, where we all raise our brows. We know these people are not going to offer us anything just for free. There's going to be some condition tied to it. And that's why when people say, oh, they love us so much, they want to fight for, I've heard people, like with what happened in Nigeria on Christmas Day, and we think that doing it for, in our own interest. I don't believe it. And this is why I'm not a fan of what's happening in Iran. We can all have our reservations, on whatever the leadership was like. I wasn't a fan of the leadership either, but nothing will ever justify a move like that. Nothing will ever justify a move like what happened in Venezuela. Because of the ripple effect, not only on the regions around those countries, but globally, and how these things affect Africa, a continent that's already vulnerable, when it comes to the economy and things like that. But back to Zambia and Zimbabwe, some of the conditions, things like data sharing, things like having access to their resources, they basically rejected it because why do you need, and when I think of, of certain countries, like when we think of the White House meeting that happened not long ago, where some of our leaders were literally offering their resources. We've seen countries, we've seen the DRC, we've seen countries offering their resources in order to get some sort of partnership. I'm not a fan of relationships like that. They might say it's mutually beneficial, but I don't see how that is mutually beneficial. So I'm very, very proud of the people of the government of Zambia and Zimbabwe, knowing that there are conditions tied to these things and they will not accept it. But I'm just going to go through some of your thoughts on this. Name of Burkina is French, still sold. Diseases were cured decades ago. Oh, goodness. Okay. The data part is the scary one. This is from Mosimane. And yes, that is scary. Because if you're giving them access to your data, I mean, what else is there? You've opened your citizens to huge vulnerabilities. There's no telling what they would do with that data. And you think of a certain philanthropist who comes on the continent that everyone, keeps being skeptical about. You're giving them access to this data to do God only. They know what they're going to do with that information. Why can't you just, if you want to be a partner, why can't you just partner with us? These are the concerns. Sometimes our leaders are so desperate. Sometimes they just see the dollar figures and they just accept anything. Thank you for watching from New York. We appreciate you. Brooklyn, rise, Africa, rise. We appreciate you so much. Regarding the deal with Traoré, it seems, Quadwalk says, it seems like a calm deal, especially how it's structured. It's shocking he made the deal, but it's okay. Okay. And that's why I referenced, the fact that he's trying to ensure that nothing leaves the continent. Everything is happening in Burkina Faso. They're not taking the money to foreign consultants or anything. So yes. This is from Mosimane. The consultant detail is an interesting one that I have not heard mentioned anywhere else. Yeah. We like to look at different angles here. Hey girl, read the whole comment. What comment do you want me to read? If you're cussing, I'm not gonna read your comment. Let's just be respectful. I don't know. I don't have a problem with you cussing, but some of our viewers may have a problem with that. Okay. All right. But thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts. Now let's go on to the next story. Moving on from Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Burkina Faso. Did you know that Trump's administration is signing new deportation deals with some countries? I'm just going to play the video for you so you can get those details. You will not believe what's going on. But just let me find that video. Just one moment. I'm not used to doing this, so I'm a little rusty, but I will figure it out. I will figure it out. All right, here is the deal. And here we go.
Our top story. The US is quietly paying millions of dollars to move migrants out of the country, and several African nations are a part of the deal. This revelation comes from a new 30-page report from Democrats on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. In the report, the Democrats have slammed the Trump administration for its costly so-called third country deportation deals. Let's take a look at some of its findings. Now, the report says that the US government has directly paid over $32 million to 5 countries to accept nearly 300 deportees, and 3 of them are African nations. Rwanda received $7.5 million to accept just 7 people. Equatorial Guinea also received the same amount to take in 29 deportees, and Eswatini was paid $5.1 million for 15 deportees. The report says that in some cases, the Trump administration paid over $1 million per deportee. The report claims that the majority of these deportees have already returned or are set to return to their home country. In the report, the Democrats have slammed the double standards of the Trump administration. It says that on one hand, the government is slashing billions of dollars in foreign aid, and on the other, it is wasting American taxpayers' money on costly deportations with no measurable impact.
The total.
All right. Okay. It sounds like the audio was good. Okay, so it looks like everyone could hear that. So basically, there's a report now that has come out showing how much money the Trump administration has spent on sending these third-party migrants to African countries. Rwanda was mentioned, Eswatini, all the countries that we've talked about, Equatorial Guinea. We've talked about them for months. The countries that keep accepting these migrants who are not even necessarily African. You have these migrants coming from the US. And the big elephant in the room has always been around how much this government's actually profiting. And that goes to my point earlier that I made about how when it comes to profit, when it comes to certain moves that are made, where sometimes I wonder about the dignity of our continent. We're now a dumping ground for why Africa? Why didn't you take them to some lofty European nation? You see, you label Africa a certain way, but these countries like the Denmarks and the Swedens of this world, you want citizens from those countries, but you think that we are a dumping ground. But can you blame the West? Can you blame America for making a move like that when you have our own governments desperately accepting these migrants because of the dollar signs attached to them? That's all it is. You think you need the West so badly, and I'm okay with partnerships. I would rather we partnered within the country. I would keep saying that. I don't care how great any nation outside the country is. I think the best option is for us to partner among ourselves. We have the resources, we have enough, we have the brain, we have the talents enough for us to be able to be self-sufficient. But in addition to the dollar deal, they probably think they're getting some favors from the US, and here we are. Africa keeps being a dumping ground. Okay. Somebody wrote the aid at this time is obvious. Okay. I wish you had elaborated. How do you mean obvious? What do you mean specific? But yeah, that's the story on that one. Now let's move on to the next story. This one has to do with, and this is the final story actually. Back to Burkina Faso, the Ghana-Burkina Faso security and trade agreements following the terrorist attacks that happened that were targeting Ghanaian traders. Just last week, we actually referenced some of that. So Traoré and Ghana have signed security deals, and let me share that with you. Here is the video explaining that. Un momento.
A deadly terrorist attack has exposed vulnerabilities on a major West African trade route, forcing Ghana and Burkina Faso into urgent action to secure the corridor. 7 new agreements have been signed between the two countries. The goal is to reportedly secure transport routes, protect traders, and to stabilize a lifeline used by millions across the region. And the trigger was a deadly attack earlier this month. In the Burkinabe town of Tetao, terrorists attacked a group of Ghanaian tomato traders. At least 8 were killed and several others were injured after gunmen reportedly separated the men from the women and opened fire. The traders had reportedly crossed the border to buy tomatoes for Ghanaian markets. Trade groups in Ghana say the killings created fear among small-scale traders, especially among women who regularly cross the border. Following the attack, transport unions and trader associations quickly suspended tomato imports from Burkina Faso, and the economic impact was almost immediate. Now, reports say that Ghana imports up to 800,000 tons of tomatoes from Burkina Faso every year. Within days of the suspension, markets in Accra saw prices surge by up to 40%. Ghanaian officials say that sudden price shock forced urgent action.
We are deeply concerned about the safety of our market women who travel across borders. If our women are going to be threatened by these insurgents.
Okay, I think that basically covers everything that was being discussed around that. I do, when we talk about partnership, this is a clear example of how self-sufficient we can be. And this is what I keep saying. We have all it takes, basically partner with the next country. You go within the region and find ways to be self-sufficient instead of looking for, I call them distractions. All these people from outside the continent that keep coming in, we can do our own thing. And I absolutely love and commend what Ghana and Burkina Faso have done. Another angle to it is, and I talked about this last week. You see how interesting it is now? The people who sidelined the AES. And Ghana was, to be fair, Mahama has actually been, he's been more of a big brother in a way and been kinder in his approach towards the AES. He didn't join the rest of the ECOWAS nations that were sidelining them. And who is enjoying that benefit now? Ghana is, because it chose not to. As long as this is who the people want, what is the issue? Especially civilian governments had already failed these people. But you now see how the world is beginning to rally around the AES. I mean, United States is actually offering partnerships, in the form of healthcare and or aid. It's very interesting. But this were the countries that you actually wrote off. Now you're having a partnership with Burkina Faso. You see, but Ghana the whole time had not sidelined. Mahama did not sideline the AES. If anything, he's been in communication with them, and that's now of benefit to Ghana. And that's the whole point of what we're saying. If this is who the people want, again, because the civilian governments have failed them, then you have to just accept it. You have to take it for what it is. And the big moral of the story is when the people stand firmly by what they want, the world will have no choice but to accept it. Let me take a comment here by Paulo Stambolidis, 5358. You can be sure those attacks were funded. Who doesn't want a strong Africa? It's a sick world. I hear you. And shout out to somebody from, I'm guessing, the Caribbean, Maxwell Joseph. The Rastafari, we're coming home to Africa. We just need to come together. Love everything, real talk. Thank you, Rastafari. Thank you so much for tuning in. And yes, that's all we need. And I have to say, when that worldwide movement happened, those are parts of the reason these people are respecting us. And that's why people like Traoré or the rest of the AES, they're good ambassadors of what Africans want to aspire to. At the end of this, about our dignity. And these people have shown that Africans can have dignity. And during that whole march for Traoré last year, we saw how people from throughout the Caribbean, shout out to you, we can't even thank you enough, stood in solidarity. Africans throughout the world, people of African descent throughout the world, stood in solidarity with this man. And that was a representation of the continent. They stood in solidarity with the continent. Thank you so much for understanding that connection we all have. And hopefully we keep building on that. And when I talk about partnership, going outside the continent, I'm very okay with partnering with Caribbean nations. Why not? We have way more in common than we don't. I don't see what the problem is. I want to see partnerships with Jamaica, with Guyana, St. Vincent. Why not? Why not? All right, I'm just going to go through all the headlines as we wrap up. So these are stories throughout Africa. Take your time. If there's anyone that interests you, please feel free to go through them in your own time. Epstein files. West African countries keep getting mentioned. Names of people, of presidents' children keep getting brought up. It's just a really messy situation. I don't know if you saw the document that was circulating, or where Jeffrey Epstein apparently had said, he basically alluded to not wanting people from. He didn't want black people. He only wanted to deal with people that were, from the races he liked. He didn't want black people. And I remember somebody saying sometimes racism protects us. But when it came to taking our resources, when it came to taking our to doing trade or seeing how it could profit off the continent, Africa was very much involved. And it's just so sad. It's how they view us, It's really sad. You don't want the people, but you want their resources. Thank you for not wanting us, you. But anyway, there's some unsealed Department of Justice documents that have revealed that Epstein's extensive efforts to cultivate West African political circles was actually it was a major thing going on. And the files detail his close personal and business ties with Karim Wade, son of former Senegalese President Wade, and Nina Keita, niece of Ivorian President Alan Ouattara. The revelations include Epstein brokering a 2014 Israeli security deal for Ivory Coast, providing legal funding for Wade's defense in 2015, and allegedly requesting Keita to facilitate introductions to young women in Abidjan and Paris. make of that information what you will. Moving on to Senegal, the Senegalese diaspora is reeling after 53-year-old naturalized citizen Indiaga Diagne opened fire at the downtown Austin bar on March the 1st, unaliving 2 people and injuring 14 people. FBI investigators have flagged a potential nexus to terrorism, noting that he wore a shirt featuring an Iranian flag and Islamic slogans during the attack. The incident has triggered a sharp political backlash in Texas with calls to restrict immigration from hostile nations. Not a fan, I would never support or defend acts of terrorism, regardless of what your reason are, be they religious, be they ideological. I will never ever support that. It's not great for us. It doesn't look good for us. It makes people even more hostile towards us. We don't want those labels. It's just very unfortunate that happened, but I don't know if you saw that story. That was a big thing that happened in Texas, and it had to do with one of our own. Interesting development when it comes to Afrikaners. Trump's administration is preparing to process up to 4,500 refugee applications per month for white South Africans, significantly exceeding the general refugee cap. Huge contrast, right? So that's the thing, it goes back to what we say. You want us for certain things, but you reject us for others. Some of the most vulnerable people right now in Africa are from the DRC, Sudan. There are countries that could use relief, but you go based off this propaganda that is clearly untrue, just to favor people that look like you. So the rest of Africa is not worthy. It's not. I don't see condemning what's going on in Congo. I don't see condemning what is going on in Sudan. And this is why I'm not trying to change anyone's opinion of this man, but anybody who is not for the people, I don't care how you package yourself. I don't care how much support you have. I will never, never, ever be for you. Never. The people come first, as far as I'm concerned. But that's my opinion. Kenyan recruiter charged for Russia and Ukraine trafficking. Last week, we talked about how, I think the week before, we may have also referenced it, how people are being recruited to go fight in the war that's happening in Ukraine. And they're not, they're signing these documents that are not even written in English, so they don't even understand what's going on. But somebody has been arrested now in Kenya. I'm very happy about this. This was somebody, a 33-year-old man, who was actually recruiting people. Festus Omwamba. He was recruiting people, trafficked 25 young men to the front lines in Ukraine. Can you just imagine this? Exploiting the fact that people just want better for themselves, and you throw them at a war zone. Like, who does that? But basically, he lured these victims with promises of high-paying jobs in Russia, only for them to be coerced into combat. Over 1,000 Kenyans have been recruited, with several already returning home. And some of them actually have life-altering injuries. Like what? It's a hot mess, y'all. It's a hot mess. Mali. Speaking of the AES, Mali is moving closer to its goal of Atlantic Ocean access. Basically, they're working. So the Senegal River, and this again, you see, when I talk about self-sufficiency within the continent, there's an $800 million navigation project along the Senegal River that they're working on. The project aims to establish a commercial artery in Mali and the port of St. Louis in Senegal. So this is actually, there's going to be a groundbreaking ceremony in April next month. And it's the benefit of this happening is that it reduces Mali's landlocked logistics costs by 60%. So now you get a gateway, for its gold, for its cotton exports. So this is a really good thing for Mali. I just love seeing people, countries thrive. That's all we hope for. Finally, the de facto state of Somaliland is facing heightened security risks following its recognition by Israel. This regional tension is compounded by local threats from Al-Shabaab, who have vowed to resist Israeli influence, turning the Gulf of Aden into a potential new flashpoint for the Israel-Iran conflict. And it's again the game of geopolitics. When Israel sides a country, that's a message to other countries who are pro-Palestine and who have reservations about Israel, especially because of what's going on with Somaliland. but we know that everything at the end of the day is about geopolitical interest. And all I can ask for is that our leaders know better than to keep allowing themselves be used in these games of geopolitics. All right. Well, and that's it for This Week in Africa. I appreciate you all tuning in. Traoré is showing Africa how trade should be done. The development must benefit your people. Remember, you don't have the technology and you cannot eat your resources from Trinidad and Tobago. I appreciate your thoughts on that. Afua Warner, you said reception is poor. I am sorry to hear that. I hope everyone else was able to actually be part, get a good transmission of the program today or the show today. This is interesting. African/tribal leaders profited from this transatlantic slave trade. Them now becoming an immigrant dumping ground in exchange for money shouldn't be surprising. Past patterns show us what to expect. Thank you so much for your thoughts. And keep the comments coming. The one thing we ask for, obviously we don't charge for these shows that we do, but all we ask is that you keep liking, sharing, subscribing, retweeting, reposting, whatever it is you can do. That is all we ask for as far as support. And this way our stories get out there. All we have is really ourselves. So please, that's all we ask for. I am at the Gloria Ayo on all platforms. I love to talk about, things that have to do with African diaspora. I do a lot of history, storytelling. I do a lot of analysis of things that are happening currently. And this is why I love being a part of the show, because it really helps me, do that analysis. And of course, Joe Hotagwa is at Authentic African everywhere. And I think there's one that has an underscore. Maybe that's X. I don't know. I think, okay, it's Authentic_African everywhere, but I believe on X where it's Authentic African. But either way, if you type it, it'll pop up. So thank you all so much. And we look forward to seeing you next week, same time. We appreciate you all and have a great rest of the week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.